Today, we're going to talk about something that's quietly protecting your kitchen from chaos. It's a powerful old law from India's past, but trust me, it's shaping your daily life right now in ways you probably haven't even thought about. All right, so let's kick things off with a bit of a mystery. You've seen the news, right? All this geopolitical drama, stuff that usually makes global energy prices just skyrocket. But think about it. Have you noticed the price of your cooking gas at home? It's been surprisingly stable, hasn't it? So what's going on here? Well, the answer isn't some fancy new government scheme or, some kind of market miracle. Nope. The reason is a law that's almost 70 years old. It was designed for a completely different India, but it's still acting like this invisible shield for millions of us today. Okay, so Section 1, a crisis, an old law. Let's break down exactly why this dusty old law is suddenly a huge deal again. So here's the situation. The world has basically been on edge. You've got rising tensions in West Asia, which of course threatens to mess with the oil supply routes that are, well, the lifeblood of the entire global economy. It was a perfect storm brewing, and everyone was getting seriously worried about whether we'd even be able to get petroleum and what it would cost. And smack in the middle of this potential global crisis, what does the Indian government do? It reaches into its toolkit and pulls out this old law. It activated the Essential Commodities Act for one very specific, very important reason: to protect our domestic supply of LPG, our cooking gas. The whole point was to make sure that the fuel we all rely on every single day stayed stable and available. Section 2, the original purpose. So what is this law, really? How can one piece of legislation deal with the global oil crisis and the onions on our plate? Let's get into what it was first created for. Okay, so at its heart, the Essential Commodities Act of 1955 is all about protecting you, the consumer. It basically gives the central government this incredible power to step into the market and take control of the whole supply chain for certain items. I mean, everything from the factory floor all the way to your local Kirana store. And the goal is simple: make sure essential stuff is actually available and at a fair price. And its primary mission? Well, it was designed to fight three big market evils. First, hoarding. That's when people hide away stock to create a fake shortage and jack up prices. Second, black marketing, selling things illegally for way more than they're worth. And third, creating artificial scarcity. Basically, the whole law is about making sure the market plays fair. Section 3, the government's toolkit. So how does the government actually enforce this? Well, the Act gives it a really powerful and pretty direct set of tools. Let's break it down. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, the government can just declare something. Anything, an essential commodity. Step 2, it can tell businesses, you can only hold this much stock, and that's it. Step 3, it can literally fix the maximum selling price. And step 4, if you break any of these rules, well, there are serious consequences. And when I say serious, I really mean it. We are not talking about a simple slap on the wrist here. If you violate this act, you could be looking at anywhere from 3 months to 7 years in prison, on top of big fines. That just shows you how seriously the government takes this stuff, making sure essential goods are always flowing. And look, this isn't some ancient history. Think back to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Remember that? Suddenly masks and hand sanitizers were gone. Poof, vanished from the shelves. And the ones you could find were being sold for crazy prices. Well, what happened? The government used this exact law to declare them essential, which forced them back into the market at prices people could actually afford. All right, Section 4, the 2020 overhaul. Because in 2020, everything we just talked about, the whole philosophy behind this act, was turned on its head in a huge and, let me tell you, very controversial way. And this change happened lightning fast. I mean, look at this timeline. An ordinance comes out in early June, and by the end of September, it's the law. We're talking just over 3 months. That kind of speed tells you this was a massive policy shift that was being pushed through. So what was the big change? Well, here's the absolute core of it. Before 2020, the government could pretty much step in whenever it wanted for key food items. But after 2020, that power got slammed with restrictions. Now it can only intervene in extraordinary situations. We're talking war, famine, that kind of thing. And to make it even clearer, a whole bunch of staples, cereals, pulses, onions, potatoes, edible oils were taken right off the list. The whole idea was to shift away from government control and towards a freer market. And just to give you an idea of how big a shift this was, for the government to even think about controlling the price of something like onions, now the retail price has to go up by 100%. It has to literally double. That's an incredibly high bar to clear before they can step in. And it's a similar story for non-perishable foods like dal or rice. For those, the price has to jump by 50%. So you see the thinking here, right? The goal was to let the market do its thing most of the time and only have the government jump in as a last resort during really extreme price spikes. Now, as you can imagine, there were two very different takes on this whole thing. The official goal was to get private companies to invest more in things like modern warehouses and better supply chains. The argument was, hey, why would anyone invest if the government can just take over at any moment? But on the flip side, a lot of people were really worried. They said that without that government oversight, it would just open the door for hoarding and price gouging, leaving regular consumers completely exposed. And that brings us to our final section, a delicate balance. This is where we tie it all together and see the tricky tightrope walk that's at the heart of this entire issue. And this is where we come full circle. Isn't this fascinating? We started this whole conversation talking about how the government used this act to control LPG prices to protect us. And yet, this is the exact same law that was changed just a couple of years ago specifically to reduce how much the government gets involved in the market. It perfectly captures this massive tug of war at the heart of policymaking. What this all really boils down to is a fundamental challenge, a real tightrope walk. On one side, you have market freedom, the idea of letting businesses operate freely to attract investment and drive growth. And on the other side, you have consumer protection, the need to step in and shield people from crazy price swings and unfair practices. The whole history of this act is about trying to find the perfect balance between those two. And so that leaves us with a really big, critical question to think about. In a world that seems to be getting more and more unpredictable every day, with shaky supply chains and constant geopolitical shifts, where do you draw the line? What's the difference between a free market and a fair one? It's a tough question, and it's one this nearly 70-year-old law is still forcing us to grapple with. Right here, right now.